आप सभी प्रतिभागियों का पुनः एक बार बहुत बहुत स्वागत। अब हम अपने 7वें तकनीकी सत्र की तरफ आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। ये 7वां तकनीकी सत्र विधिक प्रणाली और न्याय की संकल्पना पर है और इस सत्र में हमारे साथ मुख्य वक्ता के रूप में उच्चतम न्यायालय के भूतपूर्व न्यायाधीश श्री वीएन श्री कृष्णा जी हैं और वक्ता के रूप में वित्त संकाय के प्रोफेसर शैलेंद्र कुमार गुप्त जी हैं। मित्रों, प्रोफेसर बी एन श्री कृष्णा भारत में प्रख्यात विधिवेत्ता और कानूनविद हैं। आपने कई ऐतिहासिक निर्णय दिए हैं। आप छठे वेतन आयोग के अध्यक्ष रहे। आप संस्कृत के क्षेत्र में दिए जाने वाले सर्वोच्च पुरस्कार की समिति के अध्यक्ष भी रहे हैं। आपने बॉम्बे राइट्स जांच समिति की अध्यक्षता भी की है और आपको संस्कृत अपनी मातृभाषा, उसके अलावा कई भाषाओं में अधिकार प्राप्त है। आप एक सुलझे व्यक्ति, प्रख्यात विद्वान और इस भारतीय परंपरा के एक प्रतिनिधि हैं और इस सत्र में हम लोग कृतज्ञ हैं कि हमें आपका मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त होगा। आदरणीय जस्टिस वी एन श्री कृष्णा जी।
My greetings to all of you who are present here through the webinar, though it's unfortunate that we can't be present in person on account of the pandemic COVID-19, which is haunting almost all the countries in the world today. I'm happy to be associated with this 3-day webinar on COVID-19, the Mahamanas Indian Vision in Global Context, which is being organized by the Banaras Hindu University. Talking about a Mahamana would require a Mahamana to be able to do true justice in the complete sense. In Sanskrit, the word Mahamana means a person with a broad mind, extremely broad vision. As Bhartrihari said, Ayam nijah paroveti ghanala laghuchetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. So a Mahamana can only be one who considers the entire universe to be his family. Actually, this title Mahamana was virtually conferred on Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji by Mahatma Gandhi somewhere around in the 1940s on account of his great appreciation of the excellent work that had been done by the Pandit ji in various spheres of life. I'm going to focus more on his legal acumen, which is the subject that has been given to me. Legal acumen is not really a matter of just mugging up these sections of a particular act and trying to reproduce them when the occasion demands. It requires much more. It requires a comprehensive understanding of the basic principles of justice, and it also requires an empathetic heart which will rise to the occasion and see that there should be an effort made to relieve a fellow human being of the misery to which the fellow human being has been subjected. It is this sense of empathy that stands in the great stead and entitles Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji to the title Mahamana that has been conferred on him. As we all know, and I'm sure by now most of the speakers must have recounted the definite time period when Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji came on the scene. He was born on 26 December 1961. Incidentally, he was born in a family of Chaturvedis, one of those titles which was conferred upon a Brahmin family, provided some ancestor in the family had acquired proficiency in 4 Vedas. This really speaks of the mental capacity of the ancient lineage from which Sri Malviya ji sprang up. Another incidental fact to be noticed is that he belonged to the family which was renowned for recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Had he continued in the profession, family profession, perhaps he would have been entitled to, as of right, to admission into the abode of the great Mahavishnu, as the great poet Maharshi Vyasa himself says in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that he who is diverted enough and sings the praise of the Lord and sings the shlokas of Mahabharata, Sadyo hridya varudhyate trakatibhiki shushrushuphit tatshanat, he who listens to it with devotion in his heart is assured of a permanent abode in his heart of the great Lord Mahavishnu. But history had it otherwise, and he decided to go into the government school to study the daily necessities of legal formal education, completed it, and then, although he incidentally he went to Sanskrit Pathshala to study Sanskrit, and one wishes that he could have continued it there also. But probably the good Lord did not want him to spend his time recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, but wanted him to do better things and serve the country. Then comes the stage in life when Sri Malviya ji went into a government school, did his BA in the government college, and then finally, despite his keen desire to pursue an MA in Sanskrit, had to satisfy himself by taking up a job in order to ensure the continuation of family income. Then, somewhere along the line, in 1889, he entered the law college, passed out of the law college, and started his law practice in the year 1891 in the district courts. It is said that for an ambitious person, any place in the world is small because he is ambitious. His ambitions are widespread. So from the district courts in 1891, the transition to the Allahabad High Court for a legal practice came in very naturally to Sri Malviya ji. He was a great man in the sense, apart from being a lawyer, he had knowledge of what was happening in the society, what was happening in the country as a whole. That was a situation where the Britishers were still ruling the country. The Mahatma Gandhi's call for freedom, Tilak's freedom movement, and a number of great other stalwart leaders who were all clamoring for complete freedom for the country from the yoke of the British. He was naturally attracted to the non-cooperation movement, the Congress party. He was a very active member of the Congress party, and he was probably only one person who was selected to be the president of the Indian National Congress for 4 terms. It is interesting, even in there, he was responsible for stoutly opposing the separate electorate for Muslims which had been proposed under the Lucknow Pact somewhere in the year 1916. His law practice was a flourishing practice. He was naturally endowed with superior intellect, and his genes had what we call as the memory. A person who can recite Srimad Bhagavatam from memory, or who can recite the Vedas by memory, or who can recite Mahabharata or Srimad Ramayana, is naturally endowed with great memory power. Incidentally, the Westerners have now come to this conclusion that teaching the children to repeat such hymns early in the childhood is a good way of improving their retention power. This is something that was naturally taught to us, at least in the good old days, when our education pattern had not been corrupted and destroyed by the British rule. Again, coming back, with his superior intellect and his retentive memory and an empathetic heart granted to him by the good Lord, Sriman Malaviyaji had no difficulty whatsoever in outshining the lawyers in the Allahabad High Court. In fact, it is said that when he argued, the judges listened in rapt attention. What brought him to the great culmination of his legal practice was the Chaura Chauri incident. The Chaura Chauri incident is an offshoot of the non-cooperation movement when a group of protesting patriots surrounded a police chowki in a place called Chaura Chauri in Gorakhpur district, which was then part of the United Province in those days. Ultimately, there was violence resorted to by the police on the protesters, and naturally, the incident flared up. The protesters also turned violent and set fire to the police station. This resulted in the death of 22 policemen and 3 civilians. About 170 persons were accused of serious crimes warranting death penalty. The Sessions Court, after hearing them all, convicted all of them to death sentence. The matter was carried to the Allahabad High Court, where the accused were fortunate enough to avail of the services of Sri Malaviyaji, and on account of his sheer brilliance and on account of his ability to analyze the evidence and the legal matrix of the case, he was able to get 155 of the accused, the sentence of 155 of them reduced from death to life sentence. It is said that another 15 were also recommended by the High Court, although the High Court did not itself set aside the convictions, recommended that clemency be shown, and finally clemency was shown, as a result of which all 70 escaped the gallows and had to suffer only life imprisonment. What stands out of this incident is very important. It is said that when the appeal was heard before the Chief Justice, the then Chief Justice, Sir Grimwood Mears, he was so impressed by the sheer brilliance of the advocacy of Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya that on 3 distinct occasions he bowed his head to the learned counsel appearing before him. Having been a judge in 2 courts, including the Supreme Court, I know that this is a very rare phenomenon. Usually, the judges bow to the counsel only once at the beginning of any session, and finally, when they take leave, when everybody bows to them, they acknowledge it by bowing in return. But to bow a 3rd time to a counsel is not usually come across. The only other occasion that I can consider where the judge deferred to the person before him was when Mahatma Gandhi was tried in a court in Gujarat during the heightened activities of non-cooperation movement. It is said that the British judge who was trying him stood up and bowed to him at the end of the sentence and expressed his unmitigated happiness that he could give him the smallest sentence that was available, but expressed his regret that he couldn't acquit him completely. Such was the stature of those leaders in those days, and one of Malavia ji was no doubt one of the tallest leaders of the Congress party, tallest leader of the nation itself. About his legal career, Sir Mirza Ismail, a renowned figure by himself, called him a brilliant civil lawyer. About his ability, he is also said to have been reported by Sir Mirza Ismail in private conversation to some of the senior lawyers that he has learned from senior lawyers that if Malavia had continued in his legal practice, he would have become an ornament to the legal profession itself. Such unstinted appreciation can come only if there is sheer brilliance of advocacy along with human qualities. Now, the human qualities of the personality were evident when he left a flourishing legal practice and jumped into the education sector. He was convinced that apart from being a good lawyer, the society needed his services as an educationist. He therefore turned to education and founded, along with Annie Besant, he laid the foundations of the Banaras Hindu University. The university was founded after a special law was passed sometime in the 1915 or 1916. And we are aware of the good work that has been done by the BHU, the great standing in which it is considered. In fact, much before the IITs were established in India, it would have been a matter of honor for somebody to say that he was a graduate of the Banaras Hindu University. The Hindu was not an appellation which was to be looked down upon. People were proud of being Hindus. People were proud of their heritage without being denigrative of somebody who was not a Hindu. Now I come back to the Mahamana. His greatness lies in the fact that while he was a strong advocate of cow slaughter, which ultimately came into the provisions of the Indian Constitution as a directive principle. In fact, it is said that he had once strongly advocated that the first article in the Constitution should be with regard to banning of cow slaughter. Well, that did not happen, but ultimately his idea came to be added in Part 4 at least. I think it is in 1941 that Mahatma Gandhi gave him two titles. One was Mahamana and the other was Maker of India. There is no doubt about his eminent qualification for both the titles. That he was a Mahamana is evident from the fact that he gave up a lucrative legal practice and jumped into the fray of the Indian national movement, and also took upon himself cudgels for improving the social standards by founding education societies. And he was himself the first vice chancellor of the Bombay Banaras Hindu University. His other title, Maker of India, is also equally deserved, as he was one of the tallest leaders during the non-cooperation movement, during the freedom struggle. And today his bust has been unveiled in the parliament as evidence of that, apart from the BHU and several other places where he has been honored. There have been several areas and townships dedicated to his name called Malviya Nagar, virtually in several cities around the country. One more interesting thing about Malviya ji which I came across was that originally the courts in the then United Province, which was the former name of the present Uttar Pradesh state, used either English or Urdu script in the courts. Madan Mohan Malviya ji was strong supporter of Sanskrit language, and therefore he continuously persuaded the British authorities to permit the use of Devanagari in the courts. And it was only on account of his persuasion that Devanagari script came to be used in the courts. He made the mode. Finally, one last thing about him, which is a standing monument to his greatness, is his strong advocacy of the Upanishadic motto Satyameva Jayate came to be adopted as a motto of the government of India, and it really is today the national motto. Satyameva Jayate is truly said. If it is true, it always lasts. No doubt that the memory of Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya ji and the work that he has done lasts in the memory of the human minds, has been etched in the annals of history of this great country. Let's all salute him and pay our humble homage to his memory at this occasion. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद सर। न्याय अपने आप में एक अबूझ पहेली है, लेकिन न्याय की संकल्पना पर जिस तरीके से आपने प्रकाश डाला वो हमारे लिए बहुत ही लाभप्रद है। इस विशिष्ट व्याख्यान के लिए हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करते हैं।